What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to give you guys a very quick update about what's happening with Nvidia's earnings. I'll break down the charts for SPY, the QQQ, Tesla, and many other tickers. And what's happening with tomorrow is we have more data coming out. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or sign up with my QR code that's right over here. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of the stock. Deposit $10,000 to get $300 worth, and deposit $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia shares. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. That includes a 4.1% APY base rate plus a 4% APY extra for 3 months. And the offer ends very soon, so please check out my links down below to get those free Nvidia shares. As far as the market's going, unfortunately, Nvidia did end up coming down after earnings. We also completed the earnings call, and things are still a little bit more bearish for the shorter term. However, we haven't really seen Nvidia lose major support to turn super bearish. We're just going to likely see a gap down tomorrow. We're going to see if this can try to bounce or not. We're still technically range bound for Nvidia, but we're going to likely gap down, which could cause the market to start off on a low end going into tomorrow. Then we'll see if the market could try to hold support or not. But the question is, why is Nvidia performing like this, and how is this going to be affecting the markets? Well, right now, SPY is down 0.23% in the post market, basically the after hours. And it's very possible we just kind of dip a little bit, consolidate, but then I do want to note that the charts still remain bullish. SPY is still very bullish alongside the QQQ. We'll see if we come down just a little bit to consolidate before it tries to bounce again. I still have that same view. Same thing with the QQQ. It could dip a little bit after what Nvidia just posted, but then we're going to see if we get a bounce off this trend line. So far, we could still bounce and hold up quite well. So let's talk about Nvidia first, and I'll talk about why tomorrow has more data coming out, and I'll break down the charts. Nvidia just posted their earnings, and keep in mind that for tomorrow it's going to be Thursday. We have Dollar General and Best Buy announcing their earnings, and we just got Nvidia for today. Unfortunately, Nvidia did not do too well, despite the fact that CFRA reiterated a buy rating for the company. As we're very bullish for the longer term, there are still lots of analysts that have very positive views of them, especially because of their EPS, which has a good valuation, and their high PE ratios. But despite that, there are some hurdles getting in Nvidia's way. We're going to start off with the good news and the bad news. The good news, okay, is that their revenue is at $46.7 billion. That's surpassing the sales record of $44.1 billion. That's great growth and also beating forecasts of $46.05 billion. That's pretty good right now, especially since a lot of their data came from the data center revenue is what made up the majority of the revenue. And then on top of this, with things moving forward so far, they're also beating other expectations. Their adjusted EPS was at basically $1.05, with $25.78 billion in net income, both beating Wall Street's projections of $1.01 EPS with $24.7 billion. Once again, beating a lot of the expectations. That's not bad whatsoever. So great job by Nvidia for beating expectations. However, there was some negative news that came out when you actually look at the specific details. Unfortunately, the sales are likely going to be at about $54 billion for the fiscal third quarter, which runs through October. The company said in a statement today, this is a little bit below the expectation of about $60 billion. And they also are not really giving us the revenue involving China because they're still waiting on restrictions and regulations. So if you're not counting the Chinese sales, we're looking for about $54 billion as their projection. If things change with China, that could be a big benefit for the company, but they're very dependent on China. The share price was, doing well, but then all this fear involving China, a lot of uncertainty is what's hurting the share price. They're waiting on several geopolitical issues going back and forth between governments and the companies, trying to determine their purchases and what they want to do. They also gave us a revenue range for the current quarter of about $52.9 billion to $55.1 billion, putting the expectation or the current expectations at $53.46 billion. And the overall revenue forecast is still not what we actually wanted because they also did not sell any H20 chips in China during the second quarter. Some inventory was sold to a customer outside of the country, but once again, the Chinese sales are just taking a big hit. So they're waiting on a lot of their regulations to get through, and this in turn is going to likely have an effect on their margins and their overall sales capabilities. But there's still a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with China. I think think that's what's making a big difference for them. So earnings were good for the most part. They did beat on EPS and revenue, and we saw a lot of growth in their data centers. But unfortunately, the forecast is not as strong. Outlook is not as strong because of the uncertainty about China, and that is once again causing the markets to slow down to some extent. That's the main reason why Nvidia is down, at least for now. On top of this, when it comes to our data coming out for tomorrow, tomorrow is going to be Thursday, August 28th, 2025. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the GDP growth rate, GDP price index, and a lot of GDP numbers, which may cause some volatility. Besides that, we have some minor data coming out at 11 o'clock a.m. and some bill auctions. So much of the data is going to be more serious in the morning with initial jobless claims and our GDP numbers. Then after that, things get more quiet. Then for the fear and greed index, right now, greed is making up the majority of sentiments, but momentum is slowing down still at greed. The puts call option ratio is at greed, and right now the VIX is neutral. We're going to see if we get a small pop in the VIX tomorrow or not, as the market does gap down. Despite that, there's still been a lot of talk about how Jerome Powell and the Fed are still a bit more dovish. Once again, they're saying that the inflation that's coming is going to be relatively short-lived, and this is what is still helping the market hold up. And despite the tariff increases that are coming, the market is still very resilient. So the market is still bullish in terms of the trend, but there might be a temporary dip thanks to Nvidia. Nvidia is still technically in this range. This is the main thing affecting us. We need to get back above essentially 185 to be bullish. But if we end up losing 168 to 170, which is where our 200 EMA is going to likely be by tomorrow, close to 170, then yes, this could be dipping back down. I don't really see us dipping or like way too hard or basically breaking up way too hard either. At least as of right now, it looks like we're just kind of stuck. Nvidia is just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it could come down a bit towards our 200 EMA, then maybe bounce back up and just kind of trade sideways from here. But it looks like it's going to be trading sideways for the time being, as we're still technically range bound between 185-ish and basically 168 to 170 support. So we're still stuck in this range from this upper resistance to this support down here. Now, because Nvidia might gap down, it's going to likely gap down tomorrow morning. This might cause SPY to also dip just a little bit and see some consolidation, but ultimately the chart is still bullish. As you guys can tell, we're making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. And we're going to likely see a move like this, even if we do end up coming down. So if you're bullish on SPY, you need to hold above this 646.5 area at the very least to break out for 650. But if you're bearish, you want to see us basically fail right here at this 641 area. If that fails us, we could be tipping a lot lower. My gut tells me that what's going to likely happen is this. We might see a test of essentially 643 or so, maybe go a little lower and consolidate. Just like this, there's going to be a little bit of a consolidation phase. I think we might gap down tomorrow and see a small pullback. But then what I think is going to happen is as time goes on, especially when we get to PCE data, by Friday, the market might still bounce and SPY could still push for 650 as we still remain more bullish. Now, I will change my mind if we start losing this white trend line or if we lose 633 to be more bearish. But as of right now, we're bouncing, and bouncing off the trend line. Could come down a bit and consolidate. So we might get a consolidation move tomorrow. Small dip, then maybe a bounce. And then I do think we're going to try to break out higher after that. I think the market is not going to be too bearish unless we start losing critical support, especially at like 638 and 633, which is where the trend line happens to be in our other support. So we'll see if we end up losing support or not. But for now, we're holding up well. On the triple Q, we're holding up really well as well. We're not like crashing or anything like that. Now, there is one thing that's a little concerning though. What if this is like a left shoulder head and then right shoulder, we're about to get a big sell off? We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. As of right now, what's happening is we're touching this white trend line bouncing, touching the trend line bouncing. So we might come down to touch this trend line. We'll see if we bounce again or not. If you're a bear, you want to see us lose this trend line around 566 to start dumping. If you're a bull, you want to see us get back above essentially 575. If we reclaim that, we could be looking for an attempt to push for 578. I predict we're going to be coming down to like 568, consolidate, maybe go a little bit lower to the trend line, and we're going to see if we lose this to be bearish or not. We might still bounce off this though. That would be a big trick for bears. They might dip us a little bit and just cause us to bounce. Once again, hurting the bears who expect us to crash. We might not get a crash. It could just be a very, very, very minor dip to this trend line. Then we'll see if we bounce. On the IWM, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs and higher lows. It's still technically bullish and looks very resilient. Now, If we lose 232, we could be dipping lower, but I do think that this might see a little bit of a consolidation before it pushes for 240. Nonetheless, the Russell 2000 is still strong. We're favoring 240 very soon. We might get some consolidation here before we break out, but overall it still looks more bullish. ES has resistance around 6,500 and support at 6,450. We're going to see if we break past this resistance to break out higher or if we end up dipping lower. I think we're going to retest 6,450, maybe go a little bit lower. To the lower 6,400s, then we'll see if we bounce. But then later on, we could still break out and go higher, so we're still technically on an uptrend. You could also draw out a trend line for this wedge on ES like this. So it's still technically forming kind of like a bullish wedge-like structure. And we're going to see if we essentially consolidate and eventually break out and bounce off this trend line. So there could be a small dip right over here to like the low 6,400s before it tries to bounce. Look for a small dip in consolidation before we try to bounce again. For NQ, same thing. We also have kind of like a head and shoulders like pattern. But have we gotten a rejection? The answer is, as of right now, there's no sign of that. This could resemble a left shoulder, head and right shoulder if you're a big bear. But we need to lose 23,000 to turn more bearish, and there's no sign of that happening yet. But if we break 23,800, we're looking for a bounce. I would not be surprised if we dip to 23,350, bounce, consolidate, and we'll see if we bounce back up towards the highs or if we get a big rejection. Could go either way. As of right now, we're bouncing off support, so we're going to be watching this trend line right here acting as our support. Do we bounce off this or not? Look for a test of this, and we'll see if we bounce, but there might be some downside temporarily. Right, we have to see if we bounce or not. Bitcoin's looking weaker unless we get back above 113,000. We're going to be favoring 109,000. Unfortunately, there's some weakness. Tesla's dipping because of Nvidia's earnings. We could be dipping to 342 to 340, and we'll see if we bounce. So be prepared for some temporary downside. Nvidia is going to likely retest 175, but then it's holding 170. Might dip a little bit and then consolidate. So there's not really a whole lot going on. Apple's looking a bit more bullish to me. As long as we don't end up losing essentially 228, this might consolidate and slowly push for 232 or above. So we're still favoring the upwards direction. I think we're doing a great job at holding up. So let's see if we consolidate and push for 232 or not, but I think we're still doing a great job. Netflix is also consolidating so long as we don't lose 1214. We're favoring consolidation and a push for 1225. I think we're still doing a good job. When it comes to MSTR, as long as we don't lose essentially 347, we're looking pretty good. It might dip a little bit to like 336 or so, and I think that this might be a temporary move. Celsius might be retesting 58, and we'll see if we bounce. Supermicro is coming down a bit, could be retesting this resistance becoming support at 43 flat and 42. The 42 to 43 area is going to be tested before we potentially bounce. Palantir got a rejection. Unless we get back above 159, we're going to be favoring essentially 150. Rivian could be dipping back down to 12.94, and we'll see if we bounce. SoFi might be retesting 24.05, and we'll see if we bounce or not off this. For AMD, we could be dipping back down towards 161, and we'll see if buyers defend. ARM could also be retesting 138, and we'll see if buyers defend as well on that. If not, we might be dipping just a little bit. So there might be a small dip before potentially forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders. Are we about to do something like this? See, this is kind of like a left shoulder. This is like our head. Maybe we come down to form that right shoulder, then eventually we try to bounce. So it could just be a temporary dip. Right now, PayPal is trading sideways. I just see consolidation between 70 and 68. Might dip to 68 and consolidate, and we'll see if we bounce or not. Coinbase might dip just a little bit for a temporary move down to the low 300s. Then we'll see if it bounces. Amazon might retest 226, and we'll see if we bounce off this or not. Of course, Nvidia is having a ripple effect right now. Meta might be retesting 735, and we'll see if we get a really nice bounce off that level or not. That's going to be another very, very key level. Google may also retest 206, and we'll see if we bounce. Very, very temporary move. Microsoft, however, is looking more bullish as long as 506 hold. We're going to be favoring 511. Again, it's still holding it very well. DJT is coming back down towards the lower 17s, and then the VIX, it's going to likely gap up tomorrow, and we'll see if it turns back down or not, but look for a gap up around the 15 area. The 10-year is kind of dipping a little bit, so is the dollar. So all of these things are still technically bullish for stocks. The market may gap down tomorrow, maybe dip a little bit. I do think there might be a small pullback, but the pullback is likely going to be temporary. The chart's still bullish, so we might dip a couple of points on SPY to like 640 to even 640, but then we could be looking for a big bounce after that. I still favor the bullish side of things, at least in terms of the trend, unless we start losing 638 and 633. For now, the charts remain more bullish, and we're still going to likely hold up. So there could be a temporary dip before the market sees another big bounce. That's what the trend suggests on both SPY and the QQQ. I do expect Nvidia to gap down, maybe dip a little bit. We could be even like retesting the lower 170s, but then we could bounce again. We're just technically range bound for now, so we'll just have to see how it goes. If anything, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, and peace out.